Ukraine begins its counteroffensive against Russian forces. And does China have a spy base in Cuba? All of that and more today, June 13th, 2023. Good morning, early birds. I'm Jonathan Lehrfeld, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, Ukrainian military officials said their troops have retaken another southeastern village from Russian forces. It's among the first small successes in stepped-up counteroffensive operations as the war drags on into its 16th month. Ukraine's deputy defense minister wrote on the Telegram app yesterday that Ukraine's flag was again flying over a village in the eastern Donetsk region. A day earlier, Ukrainian officials said their troops had taken 3 other small villages nearby. Ukrainian Marines chanted, "Glory to heroes, glory to Marines, glory, glory, glory." Here's why it matters. The news comes after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Saturday counteroffensive defensive actions are taking place. Zelensky did not speak about which stage or phase they are in. He and other authorities have stopped short of announcing that a full-blown counteroffensive is underway, though some analysts say the fighting happening now suggests that is the case. A day earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin asserted that the counteroffensive had started and Ukrainian forces were taking significant losses. The reported Ukrainian advance comes as authorities on both sides of the front line pressed on with rescue and relocation efforts for civilians in the Kherson region after the breach of the Kakhovka Dam last week. In case you missed it, the Pentagon announced Friday that it will provide an additional $2.1 billion in long-term weapons aid for Ukraine. The new assistance package will include funding for more Patriot missile battery munitions, Hawk air defense systems and missiles, and small Puma drones that can be launched by hand. Another important story, President Joe Biden is slated to welcome NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg to the White House today. The visit comes as competition to find Stoltenberg's successor to lead the military alliance heats up. Today's meeting was originally scheduled for yesterday, but was postponed when Biden needed an unexpected root canal procedure. Stoltenberg has led NATO since 2014 and has had his tenure extended 3 times. He said earlier this year he would move on when his current time expires at the end of September. Here's why it matters. The jockeying to replace Stoltenberg is intensifying as leaders of the 31-member military alliance are set to meet next month for their annual summit in Lithuania. Last week, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak made the case for UK Defense Minister Ben Wallace directly to Biden. The US president also met with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, another potential contender. Biden recently noted that the conversation among NATO leaders to find a consensus pick to replace Stoltenberg was ongoing. But Biden's opinion carries enormous weight, in part because the US spends more than any other member in the alliance on defense. Biden and Stoltenberg are also expected to discuss Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine and efforts to persuade fellow NATO member Turkey to back off blocking Sweden from joining the military alliance. In other news, Pentagon officials, lawmakers, and others honored women in the armed forces this week. For more on this, podcast producer and Military Times reporter Simone Perez joins us. Z, yesterday was a milestone anniversary for a key piece of military legislation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Jonathan. So it was the 75th anniversary of when President Harry Truman signed the Women's Armed Service Integration Act into law. Signed yesterday, 75 years ago, on June 12th, the legislation allowed women to serve in the military on a permanent basis. And since the legislation was signed into law, more than 3 million women have served in the armed forces. In 2021, the Pentagon reported that women made up more than 17% of active duty and more than 21% of National Guard forces. And with that being the most recent data we have, that total amounts to more than 400,000 women currently serving in the military.
And you got to check out some of the commemoration activities, right? Tell us more about what was happening and who attended.
Oh, yeah, Jonathan. I attended a couple of ceremonies, actually. So, in the morning at the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks participated in an event with other uniformed officers in the military to commemorate the signing of that pivotal legislation. And Austin really made a note that they want to make the military a more hospitable place for women. It is no secret the issues and the difficulties women face within the military regarding sexual harassment and sexual assault. And he's called it a cancer. And he says, if we're serious about welcoming women into the force, we need to attack what he called a cancer to make sure that every woman can serve fully unhindered within the military. And he also said that other family issues should be taken priority too. Childcare, not just for moms, but also for dads, will help military families in the long run. And he also made a point to note that women didn't start serving in the military or aiding a U.S. war effort on June 12th, 1948. He made a stark point that service had even begun way beforehand. You have on the up and up ways that women have served. You know, women drove trucks in World War II. Women were field nurses in the Civil War and were spies in the Revolutionary War. But also some women, it needs to be noted, hid their gender and fought as men in some of those conflicts, in the Civil War most notably. So he wanted to make a note of that and say, you know, this legislation is great. We have had 75 amazing years from women in the active duty sphere. We have a long way to go, but also let's honor the past, even before 1948. And then moving into the afternoon, I went to Arlington National Cemetery to the Military Women's Memorial. While there, the Women in Military Service for America Memorial Foundation, a mouthful, hosted some pretty big names in Washington. First Lady Jill Biden was one of the keynote speakers, along with Maine Senator Republican Susan Collins. And during this event, with 300 women who are either currently serving or were veterans, they praised the work of women and their contributions to the services and where it went from how far women have progressed in the armed forces from 1948 to now. And they talked about some historical figures. Susan Collins currently sits in the Senate seat once held by Senator Margaret Chase Smith. They called her the supersonic senator, Jonathan. The first senator to fly at supersonic speeds at age 60, and she would serve in the Air National Guard as a lieutenant colonel. And then also, First Lady Biden and Senator Collins awarded a leadership award named after Chase to former Brigadier General Wilma Vaught. She was previously one of the highest-ranking uniformed women in the Pentagon. So it was a lot of events yesterday to commemorate the events. All in all, it was a day to look where the military has been, where the military is, and where the military will be going forward.
For more conversations like that one, please like and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Also on the radar for today, a Biden administration official said China has been operating a spy base in Cuba since at least 2019. The official was not authorized to comment publicly and spoke on the condition of anonymity. They said the U.S. intelligence community has been aware of China's spying from Cuba and a larger effort to set up intelligence gathering operations around the globe for some time. The administration official said the U.S. intelligence community determined Chinese spying from Cuba has been an ongoing matter and is not a new development. The existence of the Chinese spy base was confirmed after reporting by the Wall Street Journal last week. The report said China and Cuba had reached an agreement in principle to build an electronic eavesdropping station on the island. The journal reported China planned to pay a cash-strapped Cuba billions of dollars as part of the negotiations. The White House called the report inaccurate. Pentagon Press Secretary Brigadier General Pat Ryder shared similar thoughts during a press briefing last week.
So I've seen that reporting. I can tell you based on the information that we have that is not accurate, that we are not aware of China and Cuba developing any type of spy station. Separately, I would say that the relationship that those two countries share is something that we continuously monitor. I would say that that, as you've heard us say many times, China's activities, both in our hemisphere and around the world, any concerning activities are something that we will continue to watch closely. But in terms of that particular report, no, it's not accurate.
The Cuban deputy foreign minister also refuted the report. Tensions between the U.S. and China have been fraught throughout Biden's term. Visits between U.S. congressional leaders and officials from Taiwan have angered Beijing, and in February, the U.S. shot down a suspected Chinese spy balloon. And now, here are some other stories that we're hearing chirps about. An air deployment exercise, Air Defender 2023, billed as the biggest in NATO's history and hosted by Germany, got underway yesterday. A Swedish think tank said the 9 nuclear-armed states, including the United States, continue to modernize their arsenals, and several deployed new nuclear-armed or nuclear-capable weapon systems in 2022. The Army has named its first new combat vehicle in nearly 4 decades, the M10 Booker, after 2 soldiers killed in action, one in the Iraq War and the other in World War II. And the Army's top enlisted soldier said the service has met its retention goals 4 months ahead of schedule. And on this day in history, in 1971, the New York Times began publishing the Pentagon Papers. The Pentagon Papers was the name given to a 47-volume Pentagon analysis of U.S. commitment to Southeast Asia, especially Vietnam. Daniel Ellsberg, who previously had worked as a DoD analyst and became an anti-war activist, provided the papers to the Times. The U.S. government sued the Times for publishing about the leaked information. The case made its way before the Supreme Court, which sided with the Times. That's it for us this morning. To get more of the top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. If you liked what you heard, give us a like wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on social media @defense_news and @Military Times. Also, please rate us and be sure to leave a comment. The Early Bird Brief is hosted by me, Jonathan Lehrfeld, and produced by Zimone Z. Perez. Today's episode features stories by the Associated Press and Zimone Perez. Our editor-in-chief is Mike Roos. Have a great day.